Blessings, blessings, and so good that you're stopping back by again today. And if this is your first time, welcome. I'm Marcia Jones Washington, the founder of PA Women of Chaplaincy and Pastoral Care. And for the past year, I've been using this space to speak with other women who are in chaplaincy or pastoral care or some other related area of ministry. And it has always been an exciting or very interesting and informative time. And today will be no different, because joining us today is Alici Tremaine, and that's who we will be spending the next 30 minutes with. Alici, welcome, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great, and I'm excited that you invited me. Glad to be here.
All right, yes. And we know that you're going to be one of our main speakers for our upcoming Women of Chaplaincy and Pastoral Care conference. So I'm definitely glad to have you. We'll be glad to have you there as well. But yes, I wanted to speak to you so that we could learn a little bit more about you here. And so for one, you will be one of the chaplains, one of those in chaplaincy that will be speaking at the conference. And the other person that's going to be speaking, the other chaplain, she had said when she was a young girl, she had mentioned to her sister about wanting to be a minister. And at that time, she was told, only men could do that. But I'm wondering for you, did your interest or desire to do something ministry related, did that come at a young age or maybe a little bit later?
In hindsight, looking back, I can see how the seeds were there when I was a young person, because I was very involved in church. I grew up in a Baptist church in Brazil, and it was a large church, and it was one that really encouraged young people to lead. So I had a lot of opportunities to do that. And I actually preached my first sermon when I was 15 years old on Sunday morning, because it was Youth Month, and they just were encouraging us to participate. I taught Sunday school. I was part of a lot of things, and I always felt like a stirring, from the Holy Spirit to speak or to invite others, and just to participate in different areas of church. But I never really thought that it would be a vocation for me. Like, I always thought I would be like a business person who was also involved in lay ministry. So it wasn't until college, when I was trying to find my path and enrolled in a religion class, that I really understood that this is God was calling me to ministry. And what's funny, you talk about the resistance about women in ministry. That was another thing that was different for me, was that I never really encountered that much resistance to women in ministry until I came to the United States. Because even though it was a Baptist church in Brazil, I mean, to be fair, like, our senior pastor was male, and I don't think that we had a woman senior pastor, but we did have women who were ministers in the church. And I knew a lot of pastors who were women, and that had never really crossed my mind that women couldn't be ministers until I came to the US, and I heard a lot of that. And in fact, I was sitting in religion class feeling like God was calling me to ministry. And at the time, I really thought that it meant teaching. I thought I want to help prepare Christians into ministry. So I thought I wanted to teach religion at a seminary or something like that. And I remember asking in class, can women be religion professors? Because all of my religion professors were men. And I had heard a lot of that, kind of questioning about the role of women. And I remember just getting like a resounding, like, no, from everybody. But it was, women, No. I'm sorry. Can women be? I said that wrong. Can women be religion professors? And they were like, yeah, of course. Like, why are you even asking that? But it was because people were saying things, and I didn't have a role model at that time in college. They were all male, but I did have a professor who was my advisor at the time, who really encouraged me to pursue my ministry calling, helped me sign up for scholarships in seminary, and became a role model for me. And he actually preached at my ordination service years later. So that was really good. It was, but I think we all, women in ministry, we do get those messages. And of course, being in chaplaincy as a woman, I've encountered that several times. So
Yes. But I'm thinking, thank God for that advisor who was
yeah.
willing to, help you along and guide you in that area. Oh, that is really something.
Mhm.
And so now you shared that, you didn't encounter this resistance to you being in the ministry until you came to the U.S. But I'm wondering, were there other areas or other times too where there was kind of a culture shock maybe for you once you relocated here?
There was some, but it was, I was young, and it was also exciting just to be in a different country. I had been in the United States as a tourist with my family, so it wasn't completely unfamiliar. But my memories of, visiting the United States, everything seemed so magical. It was so different. I loved like all the things that we didn't have, like think even like vending machines with cherry cokes and like all these completely different things that I just thought were the best. So when I came here as a student, I think most of the differences to me were just experiencing the 4 seasons of the year, very defined way, because where I grew up, it was green all year round. So getting used to that climate of having like a true winter, a true fall, and true spring, there's a lot of beauty in that. But on the other side, because Brazil is such a tropical country, that's at least where I grew up in Brazil, green all year round. People are always out and about on the street. We're walking everywhere. We have a lot of community because of that. We do a lot of carpooling or public transportation or just being together a lot. Whereas here in the States, it can be a little more isolating and individualistic. And sometimes you have to get in the car by yourself to go to all these places. So that was different. But I was excited just to experience a new culture in a new country. And I don't know, it was mostly positive, but yeah, there were some differences there.
Yes, yes. And of course, there's going to be some adjustments and, like I said, things that likely catch you a bit off guard at times. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you came from Brazil and you had selected or chose Kentucky as to where you wanted to live.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Why Kentucky? Not that there's anything wrong with Kentucky, but I'm just saying it seems that's where you already had in mind. So what led you to that area? I suppose that's the
Yeah,
question.
it's interesting. This church that I grew up in Brazil, it had been founded by American missionaries in the 1800s, a really old church. And for a long time, my church had a partnership with the Kentucky Baptist Association. So every year they would send a group of just missionaries, but they were really mostly lay people who took mission trips in the summer, and they would come and visit our church and just do some work in the community. And the people who organized the trip, they would always stay at our house. So we developed this long-term relationship with them, and they served, or the gentleman served on the board for the Cumberland College. Now it's called the University of the Cumberlands. So he served on the board for Cumberland College, and he told my sisters and I about the school. And it's I'm trying to make a long story short, but my older sister actually came first, and she went to Cumberland and graduated from there. So after she had left, that path was already there. We already knew about the school, and it was really the only school that I applied to because we had that history with it. So I came to Cumberland, graduated, went to Atlanta for seminary, and thought I will never go back to Kentucky because not that I don't like Kentucky, I did, but it was, a small school in a small town. I'm from a big city in Brazil. I had been living in Atlanta for seminary, and I just didn't really think it was in my, I don't know, my plans to go back to a rural town in Kentucky. But I ended up marrying someone who's from Corbin, Kentucky, which is 20 minutes from where I went to school, from where the college is. And at some point, we lived in Louisville for a while, and at some point we had the opportunity to transfer back to where he's from, and we did it. So now we've been here for a long time, almost 20 years. And so never say never, is what I'm going to say.
Exactly. That's how it goes.
And now it's home. So.
Well, Alicia, getting a little bit into your chaplaincy background, I did see that for a while, or for a time, you were a chaplain in pediatrics. Now, to me, that seems like a tough area to be in with the children and infants. But how was it for you, and how long were you a chaplain to pediatrics?
I think what you're talking about is when I served in hospice care, I saw both adult and pediatric patients. And you'd be surprised how many patients we have in hospice who are infants or children. I did that for about 7 years before I moved to a hospital setting. And the hospital where I was serving after that didn't really have a big pediatric unit. But before I did the hospice care role, when I was a CPE resident at a hospital in Louisville, I did a rotation at a pediatric unit, and that was a big hospital. And that taught me so much about just being a chaplain itself, like my role as a chaplain, but also with children. And it was challenging at first. It was very challenging. I really struggled. At some time in the past, we had to submit journal reflections to our supervisors. It's been a while since I've read those, but I remember reading them at some point and just realizing how much I really did struggle with that. On one side, it was just that it was about not really knowing how to connect with children who were sick. I didn't have kids at the time. I was young, but I realized that I was trying on a persona even. When I would go and see a child, I could tell that I wasn't being myself. Like even my voice was different. Like I was trying on something else. And it took me a long time to understand that I was actually impersonating a friend of mine who's a children's minister. And I realized that I was like using her voice and her personality because I thought, oh, she knows how to deal with children, so I'm just going to be her. Like it wasn't a conscious thing, but it was coming out. So once I realized that and I was able to relax and be myself, then I really was able to connect with the children that I served. And I think one of the things that they really taught me was about the importance of presence, because especially as a young chaplain, when you're training, or just, I think early in my career, I really had a hard time with, am I being helpful? Am I doing something that's really benefiting somebody? And when you're with a child, especially like an infant, there's, you can't really use all your fancy interventions about having conversations and, I'm going to ask this question and that question. It doesn't work that way. And it's about sitting on the floor and playing with them and being with them. And that really taught me a lot about the presence of God and accompanying people like that, and even children, and how much they really just need somebody to be with them, and they need play and just praying with them. And I learned how to pray very concretely for things that actually transferred into my care for adults as well. So I would pray for the instruments that were used in their care. And I started doing that with my adult patients as well. And I felt like it was really helpful. So all that to say, those were very challenging interactions for me at first, but ended up being really meaningful. Even as a chaplain in training, I was invited to officiate funerals for children, which is so hard. But that's, you can really tell that that's been a meaningful interaction when you're invited into that sacred space with them. So
Yes.
I'll always remember some of those visits.
Yes, yes. And, from what you were saying too about needing to kind of adjust your approach a bit, it reminded me when I was doing chaplaincy work, and I was oftentimes seeing individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's.
Hmm.
And thank God that at that time or before that, I had been a memory care coordinator at a senior facility,
Ah,
and so that was
yeah,
not a difficulty for me at all. But I do hear of some chaplains that's kind of a struggle with for them is visiting an Alzheimer or dementia patient, or
yeah,
feeling that there's not really much they can do with them. And what I found though, even again before when I was a memory care coordinator, so many of the older ones remember like the hymns from back,
yeah,
back in the day or back in their times. And so sometimes it would just, I would bring up a little hymn or even Jesus Loves Me. And, you'd be amazed at how they can just join in with those kinds of
that's
songs
right.
that are familiar with them, or, that
Yeah.
still resonate with their spirit. And so, that was an enjoyable time for me. It really
Hmm.
was. Yeah. And so, now I also saw that it seems maybe about 7 years ago, you were featured in a piece or an article about this is what a minister looks like. And I know that at that time in the article, somewhere you mentioned how a challenge for you is sometimes, not being able to measure the value or the benefit of
Hmm.
what you do. And, you know, do you still kind of feel that way, or what's your approach, or what's your feelings on that now?
Yeah, I feel like that's always a challenge for chaplains to be able to measure our effectiveness or the value or the benefits of our interventions in a way that healthcare leaders can understand, or in a way that's tangible, that's measurable. There's a lot of spiritual care research now that's been emerging that's really helpful. That's, that can show some of that. But I feel for me specifically, that was a struggle for many years. I think I alluded to that when I was talking about, just being with children and thinking, is this helping? Like, I'm just sitting here with them, praying with them. Is this really helping or not? And I felt that in a lot of different ways. And I really was envious, I think, for a long time, of nurses and doctors, because they could very clearly see if their interventions were helping. I mean, is it moving the numbers on the scale? Let's run the tests. Let's look at the numbers, and they can see this is helping. Okay. Or it's not helping. We can trust. But with what we do, it's different. So I can say now that I have learned that some of the most meaningful interactions that I've had with patients, and the times when patients have come to me and said, God has sent you to me, or have expressed gratitude, or even when they don't, but it's been a meaningful interaction. I think so many of those times, they didn't have as much to do with what I did and what I said as to what I represented to them. Because they were feeling abandoned or forgotten, or were feeling alone in their experience, and somebody was able to come alongside them and see their pain or their joys, be a witness to them, be a companion to them, lift up their concerns to God, listen. And that reminded them that God is there, that God was thinking of them, that God is present. So that's what's really meaningful and impactful for the patient, and is so important. So I don't really feel the need anymore to prove to myself that my job matters, or that our work is important or needed, because I know it is. And that's the evidence for me. I don't need to see a number, on a test. And I ran across a quote from Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond one time, that to me, I think, has kind of captured where this change for me. Because for so long I was focused on, am I helping? Am I helping? And then finally have come to see it differently. And what I read, her her quote is, helping is the service of the ego. Helping is the work of the ego, but
Mm,
serving is the work of the soul. And so
mm,
I've been able to just think I'm just here to serve, in whatever, way God is calling me, and has empowered me to serve. And I think that's made a big difference for me, in how I see myself and in my chaplaincy work. But I won't lie. I mean, there are still sometimes when I find that challenge to to be able to tell others about the work of chaplaincy in systems where so many times that's the first thing they want to cut, um, because we're not revenue making, or because we can't show in concrete terms sometimes what we're doing.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, but I love that quote. You know, I'm glad that this is being recorded because I really like that. I think it was you said, helping is the work of the ego, serving is the work of the soul.
Yeah.
Wow, that is powerful. I love that. And what you were saying that even spoke to me in terms of now being a nonprofit entity and being able to
Mhm.
apply for grants. And I've come across those questions, that have to do with statistics or outcomes in certain things. And with this ministry, like the PA Women of Chaplaincy and Pastoral Care, I want to put down, you'd have to be at a meeting, or you'd have to, hear some
Yeah.
of our conversations or discussions to know how it's making a difference to those who attend or who are a part of this. But, you have to come up with something else that
Hmm.
seems more viable, to them. So
Yeah.
I know that's going to be a bit of a challenge for
Hmm.
me in terms of that. But I want to touch upon too how you are an ordained Baptist minister, and so with that, you have done pulpit ministry. And I'm just wondering, do you have a preference over, the pulpit ministry or chaplaincy, or do you feel you have a particular maybe bent towards one or the other? What would you say about that?
Pulpit ministry. So that has been a new source of joy for me, honestly. I have always done that on occasion, but for most of my career, um, really I was focused on chaplaincy, and I really felt called to chaplaincy versus congregational ministry. So I would preach on occasion, but I didn't think that that was my forte until 2019. My church was in transition. Our pastor had left, so we were looking for a new minister, and I felt compelled to apply to be one of the interim ministers. I had never felt that desire before, but I really felt like God was calling me to experiment with this and develop some new skills. So I ended up sharing that interim ministry role with two other ministers, which was nice. But during that time, I really developed my preaching voice, and began to really enjoy preaching. So since then, we called a new pastor in 2020, but since then, I've done a lot more pulpit supply than I used to do. I guess that was just, I don't know, just opened up a lot of doors. So now I've preached at various churches just around, Corbin and Kentucky, but I have really enjoyed it. I find that I have a lot of joy in that. I still, I feel like chaplaincy is still my vocation, but serving in church and preaching. And I remember just the last time that I was at a Presbyterian church, and I just remember thinking, I am so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here with these people and to preach. Like it's just been nice. It's been a new experience, and I'm really enjoying that right now.
Yes. All right. Well, thank God that you had that opportunity and you've found out that it is something that you enjoy more. I guess enjoy more than you realized you would enjoy
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And Lisi, I discovered you because you co-host a podcast called The Chaplain's Compass. I haven't listened for a while, but you would cover really a variety of topics on
Mhm.
that show, or do cover a variety. And I'm just wondering, how did that opportunity even come about for you?
So that's been another kind of, I don't know if it's say unexpected, but another source of joy for me recently. We started that podcast 2 years ago. And I've been serving on the board of the Association of Professional Chaplains. So I had been serving maybe for a couple of years when had this idea for the podcast. And the reason is we were talking as a board about what can we do to give members more value for their dues, to create some member engagement. We heard that people were feeling a little isolated. And I thought, why don't we have a podcast? Because so many people listen to podcasts, especially on their way to work. It's easy to have information that way, but also it's a really good way to introduce different chaplains, feature their stories, share best practices, and just elevate different work in different settings that you may not be familiar with, but also maybe share information about what's happening. So we had an episode about the conference that we just had and some things that were happening at the conference, for instance. So a way to give information and share stories. And the board agreed to, once I pitched the idea, they agreed to finance or to support the podcast by paying for the audio editing of the podcast. So I contacted a friend of mine. We had met when we were hospice chaplains in Kentucky a long time ago. He works and lives in Atlanta now, but I asked if he would co-host with me because I just thought it would help with the dynamic. I wanted it to be a conversation. And after some, cajoling, like after I asked him several times, he agreed. So we just started it. We had no idea what we were doing. Had never been a podcaster before, but it's been so fun, and we've learned a lot, and we've met a lot of people. So it's been really great. We've had so many neat conversations, and now we're at a point, 2 years now into it, that now people have been coming to us with ideas. At first we were like, who can we interview? What can we talk about? And now we have a lot of emails and ideas that it's hard to keep up with. So that's been nice.
Yes. And, that's the thing with doing this type of show. You get to speak with so many different individuals. I learned so much from doing this. And I'm just wondering, so for you, I'm sure it's the same. Do you have any favorite, I won't say favorite, but do you have any maybe programs that really stand out to you, or topics that were covered that really, stood out to you?
Yeah, it's so hard for me to pick favorites, no matter what the question is. Like,
right.
And I've enjoyed every conversation, but some that maybe have stood out or stayed with me. I think you actually mentioned this episode, Marsha, one time when we were talking on the phone, which is religion and politics. We had an interview with Nicholas Calora about when patients talk politics. I feel like he helped us see those conversations in a different way. And I find myself thinking of that sometimes. We had a conversation with Ayman Solomon, who's an imam who was detained by ICE for a little over a couple of months. And it was a tender conversation, but he talks so much about how people from different religions showed up for him and really were chaplains to him, provided him pastoral care during that time. And it was a really, really tender conversation. Another one we just had was a conversation with Alyssa Full about different paths in chaplaincy. That's our latest episode. And I feel like it's going to help a lot of people because anymore, a lot of people come to chaplaincy as a first career, like myself. Like I was straight out of seminary. I went into my CPE residency, and then I was a professional chaplain. And then after you do that for, I've been doing that for almost 20 years now, people start to think about doing something a little bit different, or how can my skills transfer into something else? And I am in a different position with advanced care planning. But we just talked about all the different ways that, or sometimes chaplains are forced into a transition time. Maybe they had to leave a job, or they become disabled, or something happens and they have to think of, what else can I do? So I feel like that episode is also going to be pretty helpful. But those are just a few that come to mind.
Yes, yes. And I'm thinking I want to go back and find that one about the um, the person that was detained by ICE, because I just read or saw the headline about this nun that was also, picked up by ICE. And I haven't read the full story, so I don't know all the details, but I just know the headline even made me think, wow, a nun. And so, wow, just the fact that these people in, spiritual care
Mm-hmm.
type of callings and vocations, that they are being picked up as well. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting times that we're in.
Yeah.
But Elise, thank you so much for being here today. And again, I'm so looking forward to having you be a part of our conference, and especially, now knowing that you're a pulpit minister, that you've done pulpit ministry, and have that. I know even in I saw the TED Talk that you do, and or that you've done, and you mentioned about in your area being seen as a woman preacher, and so.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so funny. That was an experience I had when I was a hospice chaplain, and I was coming in to see a patient, and he was on the phone with somebody, and he said, "Oh, I've got to hang out. The nurse preacher is here." I think is what he called me.
Oh my. All right.
Anyway, so it's kind of an interesting way that people, I think, may see chaplains sometimes, especially in hospice care. Nurse preacher, we do provide care for the body and the soul in some ways.
That's true. That's true. Wow. Well, I have really enjoyed this conversation with you. And again, look forward to having you at the conference. And so for some of you viewing and watching, I hope, or listening, hope that you will consider joining us at the 4th Annual Women of Chaplaincy and Pastoral Care Conference. It'll be September 19th. It will be here in Pittsburgh, but please come in from wherever, and we'll be sure to extend hospitality to you, and it will be definitely an inspiring day. So there'll be more information coming up about that at the end here, but I just want you to be encouraged, be well, and by all means, be here next time for another 30 Minutes With. All right. God bless you.
God, we believe for it. What are you believing for this morning? He said it. He'll do it.